Hey, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of Angular Air. I am your host, Justin, and on today's episode, we are going to be getting into routing animation. Should be pretty cool. Looking forward to it. So let's say hi to our panelists, then we'll meet our guests, and then we'll get into the content. Joining us today, we've got Alyssa. Alyssa, how's it going?
Wonderful. Good to be here. Excited about the topic.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. Me too. I got some active work going on right now that's around needing router animation. So it's very timely to have this content show up. It's
You
going to be
you
great.
were like, excellent. I'll save that ticket until after the episode. I love it.
Exactly. Do I need to teach? No, I don't. I'm gonna leverage our episode. It should be great. Speaking of
Now I
which,
see, Justin.
yeah,
Now I see.
okay. Cat's out to the bag. The secret is out.
The timing
No,
is a
actually,
bit sus. Yeah.
sure, this data work perfect, right? Yeah. No. We're super happy to have you back, Zach. How's it going?
Doing good, man. How are you?
Doing great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And Alyssa, so cool to have you on. It's been really cool seeing both of y'all's stuff going around the community. So it's a privilege to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
Awesome.
Oh, I'm so
For
excited.
sure.
I really am. I saw the episode and I would like, because I'm like, I plan about a week out. And so a week ago, I was like, ooh, juicy. So I'm pumped. I can't wait.
Nice. Well, I hope it lives up to the hype. So we'll see. Just to talk a little bit about myself, I'm Zack DeRose. I'm a senior engineer at Narwhal Technologies. At the moment, I'm working a lot on NX and also doing client work. So yeah, been enjoying that, and I've been doing a little bit of content creation on the side. That's kind of what we'll be looking at today. Is one of the articles I wrote, and I think it's going to help Justin for sure, but hopefully it'll help y'all out there as well for some like understanding, well, how we can make router animations work, but beyond that, like how we can systemize it to make it really solid. So like as we can scale it, we can, keep adding stuff on without like ruining what we've got. So yeah, and we'll see some of that. Justin, could you bring up the your screen? I want to do a little trick. Speaking of my content creation, we'll see how it goes on air. But so Justin sharing his screen will be the equivalent of me being like the magician with nothing up his sleeve. So he's got my site up here. I'll throw like a link. Can I throw a link in the comments? Yeah, there we go. So you can watch along live too if you're doing this. And I'm going to click the button to try to add this this broadcast on. And we'll do it in 3, 2, 1. Boom. Hey!
Nice.
Yeah, the astonishment on Alyssa's face just makes that all.
I must see more.
Well, it's really not that impressive. It's just like using Firebase to, like a live update of stuff. But pretty cool, and there's a little animation there, but a lot of what we'll be doing today, Justin, if you could just like click on blog and then back to video, we'll just be doing like the animations to go from like one state to another. And
Oh my God,
the idea
it's so
being
sexy. I'm so excited.
Nice. Well, yeah, Justin, you can stop sharing it. I'll start sharing my screen a little bit so we can start going through the article. But there we go. Awesome. Yeah. So one of the points I wanted to make was like the system we're building is around this idea of like putting a physical mental model to like our site. Like as you can see when Justin went back and forth, I think I've got a GIF down here. Like as we click, like the links are clearly going from like left to right. First comes blogs, then comes video content and stuff like that. It's almost like you're turning a page in a book. That's kind of what we're going for, is like shifting from one to another, or just maybe thinking of a phone app swiping one way or the other. And that's kind of what we want to build. And we're going to be building up a system around that. So just kind of breaking this down into the pieces first before we actually go out and fill any of these pieces. What we're going to want to do is we're going to want to start by creating like a slide left and a slide right animation. So that's like step one, because we'll need that. You will need to know the states of our app, and we'll figure out how to plug this into our actual routing. And we'll create some configuration for each one of these states. I think this will include stuff like the link we see at the top here, like the text we'll see at the top, and stuff like that, and like its order, so we can know which way to slide. And then we're going to, from those pieces of information, create all possible state transitions from that. So we'll know, okay, we started on blogs and we went to videos. Which one has to slide which way is kind of the idea there. And then we're going to take all of this stuff we've put together, throw it into the router module, and then we're just going to hook everything else up, and we should be good to go. So pretty ambitious, but let's see what we can do here. So step one is just creating the animations. Let's make that a little bit bigger. And just to skip ahead too, we've got at the bottom here is the stack blitz, showing kind of all this stuff working in just a little sample app. And I've got that on the right side of my screen. I'm going to throw it into the chat here in case anyone wants to follow along live or later.
Oh yeah. Does he need to put that into private chat for you to do, Justin?
Yeah, it might not allow you to share the link in the YouTube chat.
Okay.
So
yeah, I didn't want people to miss out. So I think if Justin shares it, then it will.
Yeah, throw it my way. I'll throw it in the chat.
Gotcha.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Alyssa. But yeah, looking at the way the project's set up, let me make that a little bit bigger too. Is that looking good? We can make it even bigger.
Yeah, it's looking great.
So just like looking at the way the file structure is set up, we're kind of built in with this idea of let's make our Lego blocks, let's fill out the Lego blocks, and let's get going. So we've got this little animations file here off to the side. And to be honest, I probably copied and pasted a lot of this. Like there's a lot going on in Angular animations that I've kind of pattern matched to get to. I think that's fine. I usually ask Nicole from Narwhal, Nicole Oliver. Me and Nicole are actually doing a talk at NGConf on reactive code and animations. So I'm looking forward to that. But I think I got a lot of this from her. So, but the idea behind a lot of this is we're just going to create a slide left animation, and we're going to export it because we're going to want to use it elsewhere in our application. And it's kind of, I was reading some stuff about Henry Ford and like the Model T cars, and like they had a saying that like it was like a point of pride for them if any two Model Ts like crossed each other on the road, anywhere in the world, they could stop and they could like switch crankshafts or switch like some component, and then they just keep going. Like it wasn't. There's nothing like coupled. There's no coupling like that going on. It made for really good architecture for them in terms of like they're very concerned with how fast things could get built, but also for the robustness of it. Like it makes a big deal. So it's kind of like these animations, we're using them in a certain context, but they don't have to be used in that context, and that's kind of why we built them this way. So there's the slide left one, and we can kind of just walk through that. We're going to start by applying some animations to both the entering and leaving component, and then I think Group will kind of run these in parallel. So we're going to have the entering component start out by translated like all the way to the right, and then, or I don't know, going one way, going the other, something like that. We're going to start translated 150% one way, and then over the animation speed, and we set that up here, we'll ease in and get it to like the place it should be, translating 0. And then the leaving one is kind of the opposite of that. You'll see we don't actually have the first item of the array because
like
it's already starting out there.
Right.
What's that? Yeah,
I was saying you don't have a start state because
exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
We could, like we could put a translate x of 0. Nothing wrong with that, I suppose. But yeah, because these things are run at the same time, it's like both of this animation and like this animation happen at the same time, and that's kind of what we're going for with that, like sliding in, sliding out look. And the slide right is just the same thing, just like reversed in terms of which way the entering and leaving one's going. So same idea here, just kind of like adjusted a little bit. But yeah,
I saw on your fancier, because this is the simpler stack blitz, I saw on the fancier one that on hover you have one. So I hope we get to sneak peek at that animation for your little bunny hopper, whatever that's called.
Yeah. So I didn't plan on talking about that at this one, but that one's actually really easy. So so I'm using Tailwind in my app there, and all you have to do is they have really good documentation on this. I'm not prepared to show it, but it's pretty much you just you can set it so on hover you can like translate a little bit, so kind of like the same idea here, but just translating it just a little when you hover over, and then adding a transition. You just add like a class on it that says like transition and some time, and then it'll take care of all that for you. So
very
cool stuff there. Not covered in this stuff today, but it's still fun. And yeah, I love by the way the Tailwind stuff. Like I use this on I use it somewhere here.
I keep hearing good things about Tailwind. I need to give it a try.
Yeah, it's really cool, especially with the stuff from Angular. Like 11? There's stuff baked in now, so that you don't even have to do your own post processing or pre processing, whatever it is. It's just like it just works, which is so cool. So it's really neat. But yeah, on like hover, there's some cool stuff you can do. Yeah, you kind of saw it right there where the outline comes in too, and you can animate that just a little bit, and it's just so good. I had no idea. I would have no idea how to do this with just regular CSS, but Tailwind just kind of makes it so, okay, I want that, put it in, boom, done.
Yeah.
That's all I needed. So really cool there. But yeah, so coming back to the router animations, we've kind of got our animations set now, and we're using Angular animations for this. So it's just kind of pulling off that package, getting an animation from it, exporting it, we're good to go. So next step we want to take is going into enumerating our app states. So let's take a look at this. Let me switch over to VS Code again. Or not VS Code, rather StackBlitz. There we go. So I'm going to come into this routes. This is where we'll handle most of the other steps here. But for this case, I'm going to be defining this states array, which is a read-only array, and that's going to come in. That's going to be important in our next step, and we're marking this as read-only by adding this as const to it. So what this is going to tell TypeScript is, hey, this array is solid. Don't worry, it's not an array of strings. It's actually like if you check out the type being on this, it's not like it says right there. It's not an array of strings. It's a discrete array where the first one's always home, the second one's always page 1, the third one's always page 2. So because TypeScript knows about this, we can actually just build a type based off that array. And that's what I'm doing here on line 9. So the way we do this is we take this read-only array, and we just say, well, some number. Just throw some number onto this, and we'll define that as our type here. So we can see this is the equivalent of doing like a union of those three things. But the cool thing is, if we wanted to add another page to this, so just do like page 3, we just add it there, and everything else kind of flows down. And that's kind of the theme I want to take to the rest of this in terms of like scaling this up towards other stuff. So we've kind of got our states there. Let me just go over to the next part is just the configuration. We saw that a little bit already, but we're going to define, okay, it's like what are the pieces of the routes that I really need to know, that my app really needs to know about. And so we'll create a little interface for that right here, line 11. And we'll say, well, we need a path. It's like the thing the router is going to use. We'll need a component. just put any because that's a pain to figure out the exact types of components. And the typing doesn't really give us anything there. And the order, so that's going to help us say slide left or right based off of that. And then the link text, that's going to show up in the thing at the top. So yeah, pretty cool there. The next little nugget we're going to use is this record utility type from TypeScript. And what a record will do is it's kind of like defining an object. We're going to define an object in terms of like the keys and the things that could be associated with those keys. So another way of doing this would be like, let's say type foo equals, and you can do something like this. Key is a string. It would help if I could type. And then you do like this to some state config. So this would work in some sense. This is like defining a dictionary where you're mapping a string to a configuration. And that's fine for a lot of things. But we actually want to make sure that for a specific union type, like this, our example app state, remember that's based off of that array at the top. We want to make sure this object has one of those for each of the things in that union type. So that's where record could really come in handy. So we'll see if I add like a page 3 here, page 3, we instantly get some a TypeScript error here. And it tells us right here in the comments, like, this isn't right because you're missing page 3 now. So we're going to stop you from compiling until you get that page in. So it just helps. It just helps in terms of like getting that stuff in. We could probably add a page 3 in here if we wanted to, and just see everything work. And so it's, I don't know. It's kind of cool to me. You're seeing hopefully you're seeing the cascade of how we're using TypeScript to like set up the system, and then everything just kind of flows from there. Like all we got to do is adjust things here, and then TypeScript's going to let us know, okay, you need to add this, you need to add that, something like that. You can just kind of follow the errors until you're all set.
Yeah, that's one thing about TypeScript that I think that's like maybe a lot of people, when you approach TypeScript and you think, okay, I've got to just type these things that I'm working on one by one, right? And if you start thinking about it as a tool to help you solve these things, it's just like if you're building your application, you're scaffolding, you're playing a little architecture. What you just described here is the same sort of concept. How can I take TypeScript as a tool to kind of craft something that helps us ensure this pattern of approach that we're doing to this block of code that we're creating, right? Which is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, then Justin, you probably see this a lot. I'm kind of seeing this a little bit. I'm no AngularAir, but I'm running like the ZDS shows, and like the way this world is set up, our generation, it's like if you let time just go, or like complicated stuff just go, it gets out of hand. And so like a lot of my last year or so has been, okay, I need to get more out of my time. I got to systemize this stuff to try to, just put less time into, worrying about a mistake happening or stuff like that. So putting up those guardrails in life, or just putting some automation in there to make stuff simpler, so you don't have to think about it. Some tool rather is helping you do it. That's what TypeScript is. It's that tool that enables that automation.
But it's also training and guidance, right? Like to describe to somebody that they have to do this. Now TypeScript, just like you showed, is telling them, right? The answer is right there for them. So you don't have to go and say, oh, make sure you add it here, here, and here, right? TypeScript's going to tell that for us. So yeah.
Yeah. And hopefully like it's set up, like you definitely want to have your documentation in place to say, okay, if you want to add a route, this is what you do. Add something to that array, and then just follow the errors. But I think if someone found this app somehow randomly, they're like, I really need to add a new page. How do I do this? I think it would be pretty obvious, like hopefully. And that's the goal, because ultimately I'm probably going to be that person like a year down the road picking up this project and like, okay, how do I do this again? And that'll be, and I'm not going to write documentation for myself. So
yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, for sure.
That's the whole goal there. So yeah, so using TypeScript, we've kind of got this like fail-safe way around making sure we've got our configuration set up. And this is just data at this point still. Like, it's kind of like using TypeScript and using just JavaScript to say, okay, start up the app, get your blueprints in place. And at this point, we're actually making this object that we're going to use inside of our app to like make some stuff happen. Let's go back to the doc just so I can. Oh yeah,
I want to ask a real quick question on that, and maybe you're going to get to this, or maybe not. I don't know. But was there thought of, or is this something that we could also handle on the data property for routes, for our route entries?
Yep. We'll absolutely use that going forward.
Okay, cool.
So, and yeah, that stuff is super cool. I think it gets criminally underutilized in a lot of stuff just because it's not as known. But yeah, we'll definitely get into that stuff.
Nice.
So yeah, and like essentially that configuration we made, we're setting that up pretty much just to stick it in the data property. So you sniffed it out, Justin. Well done. But yeah, this is just going through kind of the stuff we did. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is kind of create our router transition triggers. And so the article, I think, does a good job of explaining how this would normally go, where we have like we'd have like our state home, and we'd say if we're going from home to page 1, we want to shift left. We go to page 1 to home, we want to shift right, and that's like that page effect going in. And you can see here, as we get higher and higher, the number of possible states really starts to explode. So we don't want that. We don't want to be like Jim Carrey, type in all this stuff out, because that's not fun. I'm not y'all see just live, I'm not good at typing, and I'm probably make some typos in there. That's another thing TypeScript is really good at, is just preventing typos. And yeah, I don't think we use this here, but I do mention TypeScript 4.1 allows for template types, where you can see, let me blow that up just a little bit more. You can actually define a type now in terms of like a string literal template. So this will actually take, like if we wanted to get really precise with this, and this is a whole other topic, like TypeScript could be a black hole, where if you get like types precisely, absolutely 100% correct, you can do it. Like you can, or at least you can get really close with a lot of scenarios I've seen. But it's like, is there much more value at a certain point? And I don't know. Right. This is probably a place where there's not much value, but you could do it. So you could actually define, here we have our transition. We could define that to be specific, to make sure we don't make any typos, which is pretty cool. So we could say, if we said that, that the first parameter of that trigger is actually, it needs to be a router transition defined by one state to another. It would find any of those typos. But we'd actually, in that scenario, we're still doing all the typing. We don't want to do that. So instead, we're going to use just JavaScript to write some manipulation. Essentially, we're taking the data, swirling it around, and spitting out an array, and saying, here's all the types, or here's all the possible state transitions. Don't worry about it. It's still kind of taking up space. It's still kind of taking up memory, but at least it doesn't take up developer time or developer management going forward. It's all being driven at the end of the day by the array we defined at the top. So this is a way of coming up with all possible state combinations. And it gets a little tricky here because we use reduce, because I'm a nerd, and that that excites me, being able to use reduce in some interesting way. But yeah, we're essentially just taking those states, and, hand wave it and say, from the array at the top, here's an array of every possible one state to another state transition. I think I kind of go through how to do that, but that doesn't make for good television. So
yeah, I love making reduce happen. I don't love like trying to figure out how I just made it happen.
Yeah.
So writing it is fun. Reading it is not fun.
Yeah, explaining it's tricky, but like reducing as just like a pen is just super powerful, especially when you get to talk about kind of like what we're talking about here in terms of data. Like we're creating like a system driven by data, defined in one place, to just kind of let our app go after that point. So it's super powerful for that. I definitely recommend checking it out. But yeah, essentially what we get down to is, let's go back into the actual code. This right here is going to define all of those state transitions. So we can home to page 1, home to page 2, page 1 to home, page 1 to page 2, page 2 to page 1, page 2 to home. All those things are just automatically added in here. And as we add like a page 3 to this array, at runtime, this array would also include all of those other, I don't know, X many states that got added by us adding that other page. So yeah, the cascade continues to flow. It's cool, I think. And then at the very end, we just export this route constant, and we're taking those states and we're mapping it out to essentially we're just like we already made our dictionary at the top here, and we're just taking those states and mapping them out to include stuff from the state configuration object. And as you mentioned, Justin, we're putting the special data property right here just so we can like throw that state in. so our router will be aware of it essentially at that point. We'll see how that hooks up in a little bit. But yeah, again, at the end of the day, we have like this one file that exports these specific things that we'll use. We'll use the router transition. We'll see how that plugs in later on. And we will use our routes and to plug into the Angular router. I think that might be the next step. Let's check.
So this is basically, we've gone and we've said, okay, how we maybe normally approach building our routes, route definitions. We create an array and then we create instances of these objects, right, that define a path and a component. We're still doing all that there, but we've superpowered it with all the routing logic and everything to basically, programmatically create all that for us.
Exactly. Like awesome. It's just taking that same array we normally throw in, the array of routes. All the data is here inside of our configurations. It's just we need to manipulate that a little bit to make it work with the API. But the kind of the approach we're taking here is we're saying, I've got a better API. This is what I want, right? Like this is the actual data I want to manage. I'm going to manage it here. I'm going to write a system essentially to take that and make that work with the API rather than the other way around. I feel like, and that might be a big point, I feel like a lot of times the API we're handed is often what we code to, when I feel like it should be, well, what do you actually want? Like, how do you actually want to manage this data instead? I think
I've seen that so many times where,
yeah,
especially my husband's been working on he's been at the same company for almost 10 years now. And so watching him grow these products and watching them, and I'm like, wait, why is that working that way? And he's like, oh, well, let me tell you what we had to do in the beginning and why. So there's so many times where the question isn't asked of how should this be? It's more of what am I, what's the API I'm working with, or what what was previously built, and let's just go based off of that. So
yeah.
It cracks me up.
Yeah. Well, I think too, like, just thinking, I'm going to like take a step up and go mega philosophical, but like the thing that attracts me to programming is like being able to work in the world of bits and like throwing the world of atoms out the door for just a little bit. And like in the world of bits, we have complete control. And that's having some issues around control. It makes for a very comfortable place for me. But like, exercise that. If we're in this world, might as well exercise that and like form things to the way you want them to be. And like just sticking, like at the end of the day, this is essentially just like an adapter we're putting on to say, I want to get from this data, the data I want to use, to then the data the API needs. Understanding how to like put that simple layer on top of your code, that can be very powerful for a lot of reasons in terms of like, yeah, go ahead, Alyssa. Sorry.
No, I was like, I feel like you could lead like a tech meditation class, like where you just bring such a peaceful overlay to it, and it's beautiful. I love that.
Well, the cool thing about it is that a lot of these answers are within things we do in programming, right? I mean, when you talk about the need here and what we're approaching here, we can see that same philosophy when we talk about we query an endpoint, right, to get data. And we get that data in some shape or some fashion, and then we end up mapping it into what we need to correlate that to what we need to do with components and things like that, right? So it's just this common pattern that we have of understanding we get a source of some information here, and then we just need to change it or tweak it or prep it so that we can work with it in the way that we need to work with it, right? And that's the same thing that's going on here. And we do that other places. And so now it's just say that, hey, we're taking that same mentality and applying it here, right? Or the same pattern.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, it's really cool. I like this kind of stuff, especially when we have the creative direction to make our own stuff. So yeah, it's very cool. But yeah.
But I do need to let you know your reduce is super intimidating.
Oh,
I was like, I looked at that and I was like, walk away.
You normally, so this is almost like bad reduce practice too, because I'm using the actual index here, which I guess is probably fine. But
is that a no-no? I don't know about this no-no, if that's a no.
It's not like necessarily a no-no, but it's like the whole idea is like take some previous state, add some new thing to it, and then you should get your stuff. The order in which that happens probably shouldn't be a factor, but it's fine. Like we're just making. I think all I'm using that for is to make sure. Like I don't want to go. I don't care about home to home, right, or page one to page one. That's what that index is for. I'm kind of taking that and concatenating it to.
So right there where it says I is not equal to index, is that you saying don't animate if you click on the same page you're on, or no?
No, that's saying we actually don't care about that state transition because it's not valid, right? Like you can't go from home to home. You can't go from page one to page one. So we don't need to add that into our trigger because that's what we're building at the end of the day. Like let's go back up to in the article where we laid out the trigger. Or did we do that? I'm not sure if I did that or not.
You're like, it's in here somewhere.
Somewhere in here. Somewhere in here. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so essentially we're defining like from going from one state to another, and we'll see this when we hook it up to the router. We want to define this trigger so we can stick it at like the at directive to signal like this is the animation I want associated with this element in the DOM, and so if for that element. Like we don't want to add into it some extra data it doesn't need about the home to the home transition, because that it will never see that transition happen. So going from home to page one, that's we want that. We need to know about that. Going from home to home, I don't think the way the router works that would ever really happen. Maybe it would.
You don't think so? You don't think like even if we included it, you think the router would be like, I'm ignoring this?
Maybe you're right, Alyssa. Actually, now that I think about
know.
it, like especially with child routes, it may be that we just
because I could imagine both happening. I could imagine it ignoring it, or I could imagine it like trying to animate something that's not happening. So I'm gonna go and play around with it afterwards and try to break it.
Cool. Yeah, I'd be interested in what you find. Like I think legitimately though, if you have some child routes, you might actually see that home to home transition at that level of the router, and then like beneath it you'd see some other stuff. But even
I can't wait to see how you plug it into the router. That's the fun part. I think that's going to be the
it's
extra
pretty cool.
Fun.
Yeah, that's maybe the big reveal at the end. But yeah, like even in that situation, the state not being there just means we don't animate anything, which is still what we want, probably. I think. I don't know. You kind of threw me for a loop with that, but
I'm so sorry. Did not mean to loop throw, but I was.
No,
just
loops
curious.
are
asking questions.
Thank you. No, I don't want to discourage you from doing that. That's what makes these episodes so cool. But yeah, for the sake of like not wanting to get lost, let's see if we can push ahead, because I think we're essentially there. Want to make sure in our module. So this is like going back to the app module. Like inside of our animations, we have our animation. Inside of our routes duck, document, we have all of the route stuff we need. Now we just got to like throw them into different places around our app. So the first one is the app module. So let's pull it up in here. So I'm just going to open up the app module. So we've got our module looking the way it normally does, but for routes, we just import from routes. So we built this at runtime, and we're going to grab it at runtime to stick it into our app module so that when we bootstrap, it's all kind of there, right? So rather than just seeing all the routes there, we actually have what, in my opinion, is like a little bit more robust way of filling out those routes. So like, yeah, it's, I don't know, maybe it gets a little confusing to someone who wanted, if I come back to this, I might be like, wait, what am I doing with that? But hopefully the breadcrumbs are there so we can see, okay, here's all the different routes we have. Here's all the configuration associated with that. Good to go. Let me get rid of page 3 because it's making types errors that are triggering my OCD there. So there you go. But yeah, routes are there. So take that, throw it into the app module for route with the routes. And there's even some neat typing around that too. So cool. We'll see like this matches the API we need for the routes as well. The data part being particular there in terms of the state it's associated with. But yeah, next step, I think we're going to jump into the template. Or no, okay, yeah. First, we need to add the router animations to our component decorator here. So we'll see how that works. Again, we're taking some of our stuff from our animations. We're enhancing it with the routes to create this router transition trigger. And so what we need to do is at the level where the router outlet exists, we need to register that router animation in the animations part of the component decorator. And that will enable us to then, inside of the template, I think this is the last step. So we're going to have our router outlet here, and we're going to create this reference to the outlet right here. This is all in the scope of our template. No magic happening in the TypeScript class or anything. And then inside of our router transition, what we want to do for the way this one works, we want to say define the state we're in. So we take the outlet's activated route, and remember that has, if we looked at this, we'd see like essentially that object that we put in previously inside of this routes thing, right? So it's essentially we get this information at the end of the day inside of that, and we want to get the data. I think I'm a bit wrong. I think it's this we actually get. I'm not sure, but we get the data. The data's in there. That's the important part. And so we define that data right there, and we pipe that to the async because that's an observable of the active data at that point, and we get the state. So remember, state is the one thing we put inside that data object. And at this point, we're defining for this main, here's the state you're in. So when we first come in, we're on the home page. As this router outlet goes to another route, the main is going to know, okay, we're transitioning from home to page 1. So let me look up that transition inside of our router transition here, which we're doing just via this decorator. It's going to see, okay, do I do a slide left or do I do a slide right? And then inside of the slide left or slide right, as we saw before, it tells us, for the entering and leaving, this is what we do. And that's kind of tying it all together. So yeah, is that kind of what you expected to see, Justin? I'm curious.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, was that, that data property. It's always confusing to me every time I come to it, is like, yeah, it's data. So it seems like it should be, I don't know, I associate that with dynamic data, but it's really like the data that you define when you define your route. It's almost like another property of your route config, right? But it's kind of, from my understanding, designed to be used in this way that, like, look, when this route config loads up for the matching route, you can have all this ancillary data property information that can be there attached with that route information that then you can use in any way. In this case, use it to help with your router transition. You could do stuff like CSS, in an application and things like this, kind of what we're doing here. Yep. Cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's essentially it. Like we're there now. If I open up the Stack Blitz, we can see like this is all kind of working. Page left to page right. We may probably do like just really quick throw in page 3 just to see how all that would work. That might be kind of cool. So we've been teasing it this whole time. Page 3, take that, and we were just like copy page 2 maybe to get this out real quick.
So now are we just at the point of the content that's in that router outlet being the element that's doing the animation? We're not at the point of individual content underneath that doing its own animation, right?
Right. And that would all be kind of handled within each component. So we would see like, like if we're thinking about like my website, which had like the staggered animations, those are kind of just a cool thing kind of out of the box from Angular animations that it gives you, like being able to animate those lists. And I'm not prepared to talk about that at the moment, but yeah, it's pretty cool how that stuff works. And the documentation is pretty good. So if anyone's interested, like it would totally be something you'd check out. I guess I do need like a third component. I don't want to go to that point, but you'll see just by like adjusting this here, we've adjusted the app to show, okay, here's page 3. And page 3 is actually just pointing at the page 2 component. So we'd still need to do that if we were really doing this, but kind of cool. You could just kind of like add that, and like it just cascades. Like by adding that data, we just cascaded down the app to see, okay, here's some stuff here. And like if this was a proper navigation and I actually knew what I was doing with CSS and got like an actual menu like this, that could be pretty cool just to like have your menu driven by that, or even have like your whole layout for your application driven kind of by that. And that's kind of what I did with the Zack DeRose.dev there. So yeah.
So how do you I'm going to ask you a question about it, even though we're not diving into it, but hopefully we can have a little discussion about it. Like conceptually, how do you get there where you say, look, these components that I'm just choosing to use on this particular page, I need to correlate or let them know that I want your animation to be based on this, right? But not couple those to understanding it's the router that's telling them what to do. See what I'm saying? Like, so how do you say I'm building a new page, right? And these, I'm going to use XYZ components on there. These components, they need to do animation, but I want to like tell them the animation to do without them having to understand that came from some router config.
Yeah, I think I understand. So let me see if I can just put your question back at you, Justin, and then we'll see if I can answer it. So like you're talking about the component itself wanting to be aware of the animation cascading down from above. Like so this page 1 component right here. If we wanted to do so the way it's being managed now, let me just pull up we can close this because it's not that cool. So the way it's being held now, like the animation is actually being done on the parent of the router outlet. Like the main knows about the animations, and it's like those components are entirely unaware. Like they have no idea they're sliding in or sliding out. Main is just kind of federating those, saying, okay, what state are we on? Home, and we're going to page 1. Okay, home, go that way. Page, come in this way. Done. But you're wanting to get to like how to justify that kind of with animations that page 1 could be doing inside of it. Is that it?
Yeah. So your page has a list of videos, right?
Yeah.
And so let's say you create that component for the list of videos. And then that's not the component that we route to in our route, right? We route to like a page component. And so on that page component that's part of the route, there's your list component, there's maybe a heading component, something else, right? But you want your list when the page loads up to do its animation, right? And maybe you want them, all those list elements, and I think that's what we saw, that they all come up and start kind of rising up into the screen. And then when that leaves, all those understand how to like individually go down, right? So they have their own animations on route enter and route leave. But you want to build that list component where it doesn't have to look at like the router to understand that, right? So that then you can use it anywhere you need to use it at, right?
Yeah. And I think so. It's interesting you bring that up. One of the bugs I've noticed in my site, maybe I can pull that up. And I don't. It's not to the point where I'm like I gotta stop everything to fix it. But if I transition quick enough from my blog to like my video content and back, there's like a little jerk that happens there. I don't know if you saw that. So that's like an existing thing. The way I'm doing it right now, the blogs animating themselves in like those, like you said, they're not aware of the other transition happening. They just kind of go. They see, okay, I'm entering. time to start animating. And I think there's probably a way we can do this. My forte is not animations or styles, so I may be talking out of turn, but I'm pretty sure when I was talking to Nicole about this, there is like some event that gets emitted from the Angular animations package that says, hey, that animation we were working on, it's done. Like that's like thinking of this from like a reactive state management kind of perspective. That event is all we need to know. Okay, actually, don't just start going because you're entering. Start animating once you've entered and you've observed that event happen. And I think that's how we would like be able to solve this bug where we see kind of the jerkiness going back and forth. If you just like thrash it a little bit, because I'm pretty sure what's happening is like it's just like it's the events are firing where like the animation finished is happening when actually we're like 2 clicks away from that at the moment. But yeah, for most people, if you're not trying to break the site, I think it works pretty well. So that's what I'm like. That's what I'm focused on. Focused on the positive parts. But yeah,
Nice.
I put there in the article too. If people are more interested in these topics, go ahead and like the stuff. I think I put like some thresholds at certain thresholds of likes on the article. I'll put some follow-up ones, kind of like clickbaity, nice. Unfortunately, but I'm experimenting.
I would say it's analytical data, right?
There
it's
more
go. Of if you identify there's enough interest, then you will pursue doing more, right?
Absolutely. I like that. That's a much more charitable take on it, Justin. Thank you.
More digestible, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think I saw some comments going, and I'm sorry I've been ignoring them because I've been looking at my screen this whole time. But yeah, Chow's here. Hey, Chow. And yeah, were there any questions that came through? Or
I think we had one on how does this work with lazy load routes?
Okay. Well, the lazy loading is like not a dimension that actually matters for this. My app, the ZackDeRose.dev, those are lazily loaded. So what you'll see is kind of like when you if you go to my app and you like click from the homepage to like page 1, or I don't know what it's called, like blogs or something like that. You'll actually notice like there's a little bit of delay there because what we're doing in that situation is we are pulling in the lazily loaded module for blogs or for whatever feature you happen to click on the first time you click it. Subsequent times you'll get it immediately, so you don't notice that little delay. But essentially, I think what happens is, the state transition is still active, so you'll see like the page you're on will exit immediately, but it'll take a little bit maybe for the next one to come in. So that's maybe like a consideration. It doesn't look that bad. I think if you're on the site, you don't even notice, but I notice. So there you go. But yeah, it looks the same. It's just maybe that transition of the enter rather than the enter and the leave happening simultaneously. It's like the leave goes and then just a little bit later the enter starts. So yeah, that's
really like how it works. Some timing things to understand or figure out, but at the heart of it, it's the code that you went through was really about dynamically building up that or procedurally building up that route table using our animation information as part of that data property so that we understand how to apply those animations. And then from there, it's just Angular router, when it says I've gone from route A to route B, apply this transition. And so how those routes are accessed via component, via lazy loaded, that's kind of abstracted away. It doesn't matter. It's part of this equation, right? Other than the timing that you described. Yeah.
Yep. And so
makes sense.
Yeah, and then there's some interesting things around this too. I think Fergus Gallagher mentions solving the ugly vertical jerk on animation.
I've been trying to debug that, Fergus. I will get you a solution. I'm like, I just changed all your transforms to do both X and Y. It's not like it's on the StackBlitz one. It's like super noticeable. I don't even know if you can tell on the stream with this one. But I've like gone through and it's definitely, I don't understand why it's doing this. I don't know if it's somewhere in the router. You think it's StackBlitz?
I think it is. I think when I ran this locally, it wasn't doing it. So I don't know what it is.
Pulling it down, baby.
Nice. But yeah, you can see it here just on my site. So I'm on my site here. I'm like scrolled to the bottom of my video and I click back. What's going to happen is like the viewport's going to immediately change to my new component, and like it's not going to know what to do, so it just like jumps up to the top of this page, and then we'll see it animate. I think, yeah, it's kind of janky there, but there's definitely some stuff we could do there in terms of like, I don't know, just making that a little bit smoother in terms of like slowly. You probably animate the changing of the size of the viewport, I imagine, and just some ways around that. Just because I don't know. I
wonder
expect
if it's like for a split second, the content is nothing. The component is nothing.
It could be.
So it's like, I'm wondering if that's why we're getting that weird dip.
The weird dip in the
stack. But I'm going to keep debugging. This is my kind of CSS.
Nice. It is not my kind of CSS. I don't think I've ever met the CSS that's my kind of CSS, to be honest.
Honestly, I see that kind of bug and I'm like, let's do it.
Nice. Yeah. You're talking about like, it actually like, even while it's animating, it's like down a little bit from there.
Here, Justin, I'm going to share real quick. I just added some, because like whenever I debug stuff like this, I added some colors. This is main, the blue, and then this is the paragraph. So you can see that the paragraph that the component is populating in is doing, it's like 12 pixels or something on the Y that it's getting bumped down. So I did go ahead and like, I thought maybe this might work. It didn't, like going ahead and covering our X and our Y, like specifying like, do not move from 0. So now I think it might be like a collapsing issue. So I'll keep bugging at it. I'll keep debugging it, and I'll tweet something if I find the answer. But seriously, thank you for like running us through this today. I love it so much. And anytime I can dive more into, because sometimes as someone who loves CSS and I love animating in CSS, I always come to this question with Angular of like, where do my animations belong? And I think this is just the absolute perfect, not only is there state that's tied to our animation, but it's a route as well. And so it's like the most perfect example you could come up with to say, this doesn't belong in just CSS, right? This is where we need to pull in our Angular animations and go. So I loved it. Thank you, Zach.
Of course. Yeah, I love that about the Angular animations package too. Like I know just having like the sort of a gap in my CSS knowledge, like I've mentioned, it's like there's probably ways of like really doing kind of the stuff I'm doing in TypeScript and like packaging those up so that like in a similar way, it's just like these specific things that are exported. There's all this private stuff happening, all this stuff like going on. But don't worry about that. Here's like the public API you need, and just take that and put it where you need it. I'm sure there's that kind of stuff in CSS, but this like gives me a way around that to say like, here's my animation, slide left, slide right. That makes sense to me. I just want to take that and like have that as my little Lego block and take that and go forward. So, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And Alyssa, you make a great point there of understanding, thinking about like, where do we use Angular animations versus just raw CSS? And this is a great example, like you said, of of the need to programmatically set up some data and information and then use that to build our animation story. Right. And so for there, how do we do that? We utilize Angular animations because it allows us to programmatically build out essentially the CSS for it. Right. Versus say maybe on those components that have a list, we could do that right in the CSS and just target those list items. And as soon as they are visible, they do that CSS animation. Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Was such a great example. Yeah.
Nice. Well, I'm glad
Very
it
cool.
was helpful. I hope it helps you out with the stuff you were working on, Justin. So.
Oh, for sure. It's exactly everything that's needed in the request is to do this sort of concept of router transition, and then animation of the stuff that comes in on that page. So yeah, it's going to be killer. It's going to be super cool. I got to say, like not to derail your content. I love your content, but like I could just spend the entire day clicking through the links on your page because it's so fun to watch everything move and animate. I mean, that's one of the things for me, and I think Alyssa and you as well, like this concept of why the web is so amazing and of a place to build and create is because it's this, ability to control the visual medium experience of it, right? And animations is such a key part of being able to say, look, I can build content for the web that is interactive and immersive, right? And it's a thrill. And I know for me, like I don't get enough opportunity to build animated stuff, and always looking for an excuse or a reason to be able to dive into that, because for me it's the thing that drove me to the web in the first place so many years ago, was this ability to write program and code and make that visual experience.
Yeah, I'm 100% on board, Justin. There's something like going from like I guess before. Maybe the first year of my career was like primarily like back end kind of stuff, and there's just like this disconnect, like because like you're writing code, but you don't see how it's like actually affecting people, and just like having that, like especially Angular where you had like the ng serve at the time, that was really cool to me because it's like boom, there it is, like this is the gap between me and the users completely close is right there. That was so cool to me. I got into coding in general because I really wanted to get into video games. But then I found out how bad the video game industry is. So yeah, kind of squashed my dreams there.
That's how, in a roundabout way, I did too. My husband, he got into programming because of gaming, and he went into game dev, transitioned to web dev, and then got me addicted. So that's
nice.
Same road, Zach. Same road.
We're all on the same road. It's nice to meet people on it.
For sure.
So,
awesome.
very cool.
Well, this was super killer. I guess I don't know if I didn't ask earlier if before we started the show if anybody had any picks, but if anybody has any picks they want to plug or mention, and we can do that real quick. Start with our panelist, Alyssa, if you have anything.
I will be in an hour on Code It Live. I do UI Fridays, so twitch.tv/Code It Live. And I'll have my friend Ed Charbonneau on there with me. And today we're building out a VS Code theme. And I've never dabbled in the theming. So come join for fun and hangout time while we create a theme. So yeah.
Is it going to be a My Little Pony based theme?
If I have any say, over it, I can 100% guarantee ponies and rainbows. So,
which one's your favorite, Alyssa?
My favorite, Pinkie Pie. She's my spirit
Okay.
animal. She's on. I was going to show you my laptop. Actually, I can twist this around. She is. We're going upside down.
Nice.
Whoop. She's my spirit animal. If anybody knows anything, I'm actually an honorary brony from the brony community. I was like, I'm not a guy. Am I allowed to be a brony? And they were like, your love of My Little Pony makes it so great. It overcomes gender. So yeah.
Nice.
But no.
No, I'm not a brony, but I do have young girls that love My Little
they
Pony,
love it.
so.
Do they? So you have the show on then. You're there. Okay.
Yeah. Claire's favorite is Pinkie Pie, like you said, and Avery's favorite is Rainbow Dash. So
yeah. Good, two good choices. As long as nobody's picking Twilight Sparkle, we're fine. She's the most annoying to me. So.
Aw, Twilight.
The main character? That's the purple one, right?
Yeah, the main character.
Oh, okay.
Are you
That's just
making
kinda
pony
lame.
puns? You said the main character.
Wait, what?
Yeah, oh, sorry. You're making pony puns.
I got it now.
That was totally, the cheese wasn't needed. You go to your pick. You go.
No, I like it. That was great. Yeah, cool. Zach, do you have anything that you want to pick, or it's not required, so no pressure.
Okay. I've really been enjoying Lex Friedman's podcast recently. I don't know if y'all are familiar with him or not, but he's like, he does AI at MIT and worked with Tesla for a while, and he's just doing some really cool stuff there in terms of like getting interesting people on to talk about AI and like future stuff and stuff like that. It's very cool. I'm trying to get more into podcasts a little bit, and his like, seems really cool, especially for people in our
time. That's my hardest thing because time.
Yeah,
do you have like a drive or a commute or anything, or that used to be, but I work from home now, so that's not a thing.
Yeah. So I actually we're out. We just moved out to like kind of out in the desert a little bit. And I really like driving just through the countryside. So I'll just like, it's a countryside. It's driving through the desert essentially, but it's still cool. And you see like the mountains in the distance. So like I'll actually get in, get all the girls in, and we'll put on like My Little Pony or something on the van TV so they can
and
listen
go for
to that.
A ride. Yes.
Yeah, and go for a ride, and just I'll listen to my podcast then. So
nice.
It's kind of nice, and I do it at bedtime too. It helps me like kind of calm down,
wind down. That's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah. Cool. That may be another pick. My wife got me like this really neat headband, a Bluetooth headset thing. It's very cool for falling asleep with while listening to something, without bothering your partner. So I think it was like $5 on Amazon.
I was like, I'm gonna need a link, Zach. I'm gonna need a link. Okay, thanks. Because that sounds like I need it right now. So thank you. These are good picks.
Nice.
Very good. Very good. Awesome. Well, hey, Zach, thanks a ton for sharing your time, sharing your content, coming back on the show. We really appreciate your time and all this information. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
I say we just book you for 500 right now. We just do it.
I want to be number 300. I told Justin I'm going to have to sign up for another one.
Yes.
So I was number 200. I don't know if we mentioned that while we were live, but I think I was like randomly put on because there was some scheduling thing, and I was like, I get to be number 200. And I was hoping this would be number 300, but Justin's not putting numbers on. So.
I did. We had it was hard to manage the numbers. I'm like, it's too complex. It was like a reduce. And so I was like, oh no, I'm out. I'm tapping out on the numbers. But I think we're like 280. It's like 280. So my interpretation of reduce. It's like I think we're like 284 this time. So we got like 16 episodes. So we'll book you for that.
We're gonna pre-book you for 300. Just
nice.
So.
I did it. And then, the challenge there. I'm done with that one, I'm gonna book number 400.
There we go. The challenge there is like we've got to get coordination from all the other 13 guests, right, to make sure that they still are available to do those 13 shows. Otherwise, but I guess we could just flex and be like, okay, you're going to be number 300, and it may be this date, but it may.
Here's what you do, Justin. You just say, "This was 300." Like, trust me. No, who's gonna count?
You're right. This is 300, right? This is the one.
Number 300.
Nice.
There we go. Solved. Awesome. Well, thanks a ton. Appreciate it. Looking forward to more content from you as always. And anytime you want to come back, let's schedule it. We'd love to have you.
Awesome, dude. Yeah, looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks, everyone. That's a wrap. See you next time. Later.